No, I'm seeing it
Two.
3 o'clock.
So, we will call the January meeting of the Economic Development Committee meeting to order. We don't have any formal business, so I don't think we worry about quorums and whatnot. We do, though, have, we must have an interesting meeting.
You need public comment.
I'll get to that, if you don't need it. We do have one thing I wanted to lead off with, and that is that we have a new member of the committee. Mark Doherty is joining us, filling in for Dave Boucher, so you've got mighty big shoes to fill.
I know that. I knew Dave.
Mark, would you like to take a second and just tell us a little bit about your background and why you're interested in the committee?
Obviously, well, not obviously, I was actually born here at the Reading Hospital. My dad was very active in this community. Very active in West Reading, where last month I was reelected to the board of the Revitalization Foundation, and once again reelected to be president. I can never get out of it. I try hard.
Start going to meetings, then they won't elect you.
Yeah. So obviously I'm very active with West Reading, and I really do want to see the two boroughs work together very hard. Michelle and I sit on a task force together. I think it's vitally important that these two boroughs work hand in hand. So that's why I'm here.
All right, well, welcome aboard. We have a fact checker here with Nick for you today to make sure that
I was at the meeting, he wasn't.
Yeah.
All right, well, Mark, welcome, and we will now move to public comments. Are there any public comments?
Yeah. Adrian J.D., 48 Cardinal Road. Good morning. I recently attended an economic development meeting in Cumru Township on January 23rd, and it was a striking experience. I saw firsthand how other municipalities treat their residents and visitors with respect, with consideration for their opinions, and with a true commitment to public engagement. The contrast with Wyomissing is quite frankly unsettling. In Cumru, every participant received professionally printed full-color copy of the consulting firm's presentation, the same as what was given to township commissioners. Residents were provided with the same information as their elected officials, ensuring that they could engage in meaningful discussions, not sit in the dark trying to decipher complex topics. More importantly, after every discussion, officials actively asked for public input. They didn't just allow it at the beginning, when people don't even know what's about to be discussed. They encouraged it throughout the meeting, making sure that no voice was ignored. The meeting did not end until it was clear that everyone had the opportunity to be heard. As Martin Luther King Jr. said, I have a dream. And my dream is that one day Wyomissing will do the same. That we will have a borough where residents are treated with the same dignity and respect, where they're not interrupted, demeaned, or bullied when they stand up to speak. A borough where officials see public engagement not as a nuisance, but as a responsibility and a plus. Economic development is more than about buildings and businesses and tax revenues. It's about the people who live here, work here, and make this community what it is. And when those people are dismissed, ignored, or treated as an afterthought, it undermines the very foundation of our borough's growth and prosperity. By the way, Bill, you just called my emails crap, FYI. Wyomissing has a reputation to uphold, one of excellence, one of leadership. Let's prove that reputation is deserved by fostering a government that listens to, respects, and values the voices of its residents. Thank you.
Thank you, although I'm unaware that this committee has ever been guilty of any of those infractions. But nevertheless, today we have a kind of a general subject. We occasionally invite John Buccinno, who is a longtime real estate broker with NAI Keystone Commercial Brokers. John has been very active in Berks County, but in particular in the Wyomissing, Spring Township, West Reading vicinity in particular. So we're always pleased to have John join us and fill us in on things that we should be concerned about. We will then follow up with updates on a bunch of different things that we have underway. But we'll let John have the floor first. So, John?
Thank you. Good morning. Good morning. I think I recognize most folks here. John.
Do you, is there anybody you don't know? Just
I'm not sure.
The Main Street Executive Director for West Reading, Nick Price.
Good place. Please meet you. John. That was actually a nice little segue, what you guys talked about in terms of trying to, raise the level of, awareness, cooperation, all the rest of it between the two boroughs. Because for today, most of my sort of updates and comments sort of pertain to West Reading to a large degree. There's not a lot of new earth-shattering stuff happening in the borough of Wyomissing right now. It's pretty stable right at the moment. There's a couple of projects that are sort of simmering under the surface a little bit to see if we can bring some of the vacant land to an improvement level as far as either repurposing them, redeveloping them. There's North Park Road seems to be kind of the center. North Park Road, Van Reed up in there seems to be the center of activity at the moment. A little bit of add-on to the area in front of the school, Teleflex area. There's a lot there that is positioned pretty well for an infill for a development project, just starting to bring it out to the market, getting some good interest. Everything from hospitality to potential restaurant to potential medical is a possibility there. So there's some activity happening along that little corridor there. There's a lot of projects, potential projects that seem to be in sort of a state of unknown, and there's a state of stasis, I guess. We're just waiting to hear about what's happening. I know most of you are very much, probably more in tune than I am, but things like the Crown Plaza and the mall, obviously. And there's a lot of opportunities that, we're all sort of waiting to see what the next step is going to be. And once those sort of loosen up, I think that'll be like the next transition of the community into like sort of the next highest and best for modernizing some of those older buildings. I'm told that and this is a little old information, yours is probably a little bit more relevant, but I'm told that the former Giannotti site, former Berkshire designer, that site is coming along pretty nicely for a residential development in that State Hill Road area. And then
that's the old Arner's.
Yeah. It looks like it's going to be multifamily in the rear. I haven't gotten clarity on whether or not there's going to be any retail up front, but it sounds like there might be enough room for some type of retail up front. So apart from those projects, there's a couple of things I wanted to kind of just put out there. I've been approached by Atonement, which you guys are very well aware of, just down the street, that they have an old community center that they're trying to figure out what to do with it, and it's a very challenging site. It's an old building. It's pretty much obsolete. There's not much you can do with that.
Be careful there. That's the original borough hall.
I know. That's why I've been learning about it here recently, and and I actually had a conversation with Michelle and said, why is there a way to sort of utilize it in some capacity for the things that you guys have going on? And she said it's been explored, and it just doesn't work. It just doesn't quite fit the bigger picture plans. But it's a challenge for them because it's the property. I mean, the upkeep on it, just to maintain it at this level, at this stage, it's a burden for the church there, and so they're just looking for solutions for it, and it's well positioned. It's got it's very visible for your community, and it's one where, what do you do with it, right? And I from my perspective, I don't mean, you know, any disrespect at all, but from looking at it just from a pure real estate standpoint, you look at it and say, it's really kind of a, you know, raise it and build something else, right? Because it's got a well-located piece, though it's a small site. It does represent like kind of an opportunity for a new building to go there. But I know there's, you know, historical resonance on that property. So working with the group over there to try to figure out, you know, if there's a way to preserve it, or if it really is a case of just having to, you know, redevelop the site. So that's just in motion. So who knows how that will play out? But it's sort of it's a gateway type of parcel. I mean, you know, it's very, very visible as you pull up State Hill and make that intersection there. So it'd be one where, you know, I think any plans that might move forward, you know, I would recommend to the atonement that they make sure that they speak with you guys to try to coordinate to make sure whatever does end up happening to that site, there's alignment with the overall vision of Wyomissing for this, you know, again, I feel that's kind of one of your main intersections for Wyomissing. So, apart from that, you know, there's just little happenings on the peripheral here and there, in just a real general overlay as far as the activity level. There's absolute uptick in the level of business here since the first of the year, since November, really, since the elections, things really have picked up. I think just all election cycles at the federal level create uncertainty, and it creates a little bit of a pause in activity because people just need to, businesses especially, they just need to figure out what the rules of the road are going to be. So there's typically a pullback, you know, of that year, second half of the year, until they see how the sticks are going to fall. And once clarity was created, it just, you could tell there was a lot of pent-up demand because it just sort of came out like a fire hose, and it's been going ever since. So now this is a lot of deal flow, not necessarily to the point where we actually have, you know, really defined projects yet, but there's a lot of activity behind that is moving in that direction. So I see 25 as being a very interesting year for defining projects and defining, you know, where the next high level of activity is going to be. And you know, Wyomissing is on the radar. This whole area is for this region of Pennsylvania, and it's a huge difference. You can feel it from my perspective, what I'm doing. You can feel the level of activity, the interest, the calls that you get from not just the you know small radius here, but all the way across the state and the nation and the region. So you got to keep in mind that a lot of the Lehigh Valley is built out. It's very expensive. You're getting a lot of development coming in from the main business areas of Montgomery County. Lancaster is very difficult to develop in because the land is just, it's the way it's zoned, tons of agricultural, there's just very few corridors for development in Lancaster. And we have this connectivity issue between sort of going towards DC and Virginia up through Washington that we sit pretty well for a lot of the manufacturing and, you know, more of the industrial. But you know, when you start to build your industrial base and the manufacturing base, it brings so much more activity into the area. There's all types of ancillary and tangential activity that supports the industrial segment. So we're seeing that. We're seeing that in the office uptick. I mean, surprisingly, it's very firm and active. It's not gangbusters by any means, but it's steady and firm. So we're seeing good activity and infilling a lot of the properties. Travelers building. Travelers gave up 30,000 square feet at the beginning of 2024. By the end of 24, it was 100% full. So I mean, that was a nice absorption of office, just as an example. So there is a good steady, you know, movement. As typical to the area, we don't really go, you know, gangbusters and, you know, spikes and valleys types of things, which is pretty steady Eddie, but the trend line is definitely continuing to move up in terms of the overall economic pace. So I think that just bodes well. And then you couple that with the fact that there's just nowhere to develop anything, so it's gonna create continued demand for the inventory that's out there. So we see that as positive. As far as new things in the vicinity, kind of lends to the West Reading now, just not knowing we've already discussed, etc. But there's a couple things that might be of note that could be of interest. One is, as many of you may know, Rite Aid has filed bankruptcy, and they are going through a workout phase of the properties, and it's not looking good for several of the Rite Aid locations in our market, and specifically the one at the West Reading Shopping Center. It's that's an older model, older version. It doesn't have a drive-through, and we've been working with. I represent the owner there, so we've been working with Rite Aid on a couple of different modifications of the lease agreement, and they just keep ratcheting it down and down, creating more flexibility and, in our minds, a clear path towards terminating the lease, which they're going to have that right to do via their bankruptcy proceedings. So it's an interesting opportunity, and it's one where we're looking at potentially. So just to back up just briefly, one of the obstacles for the owner to take a look at kind of a bigger picture view of redeveloping the West Reading Shopping Center has always been the Rite Aid, because they have a long-term lease in there. And to try to maneuver around them and try to get them to get on board with relocating them, etc., has always been one of the main challenges. So in some regards, we're looking at this again as kind of reopening possibility of that termination of that lease, creating the opportunity to relook at a development of that. It's just basically a block. It's all but the little gas station that's there. So it could be interesting. We were very far along at one point. We were very close to having a really nice project. We had interest from major developers from Philadelphia to do about 199 unit apartment that would be over retail, so it'd be a 5-story structure. So it was going to be about 20,000 square feet of retail with 4 floors, and that included a parking garage. Now we had secured, not overstated because we weren't finalized, but we had agreement by all the taxing authorities to a TIF. We had worked out the details and got down to the actual numbers of it, but we had everybody on board that they would agree to a TIF, subject to final numbers and how this thing was the formula that was going to be used to calculate it when the interest rates went up. And when that happened, it was a combination. There was pressure being put on because this was the time when the supply chain was getting disrupted and the cost of materials were going up at a pretty quick clip. So we were still good during that phase, but the real kicker was when the interest rates went up, and it just turned the project upside down. So it really, sort of landed home how important timing is. And one of the things that was a little bit of frustration on it, and this is just me venting a little bit, so just please excuse me, but we had started that TIF a year before that process. And it was such a textbook application of a TIF, which I'm not sure if everyone understands what the tax and criminal financing is and how it works, but it was just such a benefit to everybody to be able to do it. It was specifically used to build a garage, and it was going to be a private-public type of scenario. The public would get an allocation of parking spaces. The balance of it would have been for the project, and it just took a really long time for that to come together. Hopefully, if we come back, that the groundwork's been laid and that we can potentially expedite the next phase of that if we can get the numbers to work again.
From your opinion on just the length of time from that TIF, where do you think the biggest time sinks are in that process? What can we look to try to improve a process now before another one comes up?
Well, it was the school board that was the real, and they're very deliberate. And I think the other entities can be more nimble. I mean, this is something at the county level they have a lot of experience with, and they can get their heads around it quickly. West Reading was extremely good to work with, and they were very proactive. They helped the process tremendously with the school board. But, the school board is not something they do every day. So I can see how, it was a level of frustration, but it was not unforeseen. But at the same time, the hope is some of that legacy understanding is still retained within the school board, so that if we return to them, we don't have to start from scratch.
I know that's something, I think this perhaps committee has had meetings involving KIFs before. I think I've sat in here and we've had different taxing things explained previously. I think it's been a number of years. Is that something worthwhile to bring back up and continue?
We have. In addition to what you're referring to, when we've had a couple of developers in here talking about some kind of incentives, we have met with both the Wyomissing and the Wilson School District separately. But and all we really basically ask for is keep an open mind.
You're kind of talking about two different things, though. You're talking about alerta, you're
Yeah,
talking
but
about
it's still,
But to answer
happens.
Rick's question, I don't know of a project we would have right now, per se, that we would be able to use a TIP fund.
Okay.
Before we did 4th Street and got funding for that
I know that was the project that it came about. It's
Yes.
kind of on the tail end of the 4th Street project. If we would have known about that information sooner, we said we could have applied for that. So are there other things, again, me not having that breadth of knowledge other than LERTAs and TIFs, are there other things that we should be aware of that can aid in those development processes that we should be ready to move more nimbly with? If you're saying that you went into areas they weren't familiar with what you were presenting, how can we better prepare ourselves for those developers to come in? Is there something else that we could actively be pursuing to help that process?
That's pretty much it.
Yeah, as far as pound for pound, bang for your buck, those two incentive packages are the most effective and provide the most incentive for a project, right? The difference is one is pretty much the LERTA is more or less a standalone for that project, and it benefits the developer to make numbers work, to make it either a go or no-go project for them. But the TIF has to have a public good component to it. There has to be some kind of road improvement, or in this case it was the parking structure, parking garage that was going to have, add public parking to the area. So there has to be that component to it. So not all projects will qualify. So it's just a matter of, I think the best thing to do really is identify specific projects that you have in your community and see how a repurposing that project might lend itself towards one or the other, or both. I don't know if you do both in the same project, but one or the other, and figure out, just so that you're sort of ready, right, to see if at one point, if you're approached for a redevelopment of the site, that you can sort of at least signal to the parties that are coming to the table that might be something to pursue or to think about, and, to sort of preload the conversation a little bit, that might help the numbers, and then at least communities on board from the borough's standpoint.
And one other thing we did in West Reading, John knows, is our foundation actually through Dirk and Edson developed this strategic plan for West Reading, which was then accepted by the borough. So we have actually streamlined the procedure that the minute CHIP would like to do something, it's on the books and we can move immediately. We don't have to go through a lot of the other things that would slow it up.
Right. And that was helpful.
But that was exceedingly helpful.
Well, it helps frame, when we brought it to the board of the school board, that pre-work helped to frame the conversation tremendously. So it did help them get an understanding of what the ask was, so to speak. So that really, again, that was a good piece to have. This is very, very early days. There is still time here before Reading has to provide notice. I want to say they have until May before they have to make a decision. So we really can't do anything until that gets resolved. I mean, they may come back and say we want another year or whatever, and it's the way it's set up. They have some rights in that, but all sort of signals at the moment kind of point to, there, if you walk that space, there's hardly anything on the shelves.
That's dismal.
It's, you know, they're looking like they're winding it down. I mean, that's like we're getting at. So just kind of stay tuned for that. We'll see how that next phase looks. And the other big one in the area is the former Palmer chocolate site. So we're working pretty closely with the Reading Development Authority. We've approached the borough as well. We're looking at trying to come together. And we have a good relationship with Palmer Chocolate, and we're working towards, when I say we, I'm working with a development group that is they're local, they're very interested in sort of working together, and we're in discussions with the redevelopment authority to sort of just create like a holistic approach to it, private public, just to try to figure out, it's a really complicated project to really bring online, because you have a lot of legacy issues from the old factories, old buildings. A lot of them were demoed, but you have these other dynamics involved because part of it's in the floodplain. You've got the rail line right there that's, you know, kind of an overhead rail. That's, you know, how do you work around these issues? It's not a really simple project, but it could be very interesting, and it could certainly add, the idea behind it is to add housing stock, so it would be more or less multi-level, multi-family residences would be the play there. There's not much else. It's too remote for commerce. I mean, the other decision is, do you want to convert it into more either warehousing, industrial, right? Those are really the only two choices for that location that you have. Nothing else really logically makes sense there. So, but the momentum right now, and there's a firm commitment from Palmer Chocolate to make this a good outcome and a good process for the community. They're very committed to not doing anything just for the sake of doing it. And I think that's where we're kind of pulling together a good team to potentially, you know, deliver something that would be beneficial to the community. And you know, we all know that the housing stocks are really, really tight right now. I mean, there's no inventory. So, you know, I think
At the moment, in the entire Wyomissing School District, residentially, there are 8 properties for sale.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's only 3.
Yeah, well, that was, yeah, maybe it is 3 now.
No, it's like 3 in one.
Yeah, no, it's tight, and you know, I'm not necessarily an advocate for, you know, pushing a ton more chips into multifamily, but the housing, it's, I don't want to say it's a crisis level, but it's helpful. It's very, very challenged at the moment. I would like to see more single-family residential or of the sorts kind of come online, which is sort of exciting about the Spring Township, but the area over there by the hospital land, over by Paper Mill and Broadcasting Road, that development. I haven't had recent updates on that. I know that, you know, the group is still moving that along, but I haven't heard anything really since last fall about where they are in the process. But that's 1,500 units of residential proposed on paper for that development site. So, I mean, that's not nothing in our community, so that would be significant.
No, that I've been speaking with some people from Spring, and it is definitely moving ahead. They got some state grant for road improvements with the intersection with the highway.
Did they get grants for that? 'Cause I know that was one of the
Single family?
10 spots.
Well, it's a mixed use then. Across from Barnes and Noble, basically, there's retail, including a hotel. There's some municipal use. They want to have some kind of fire, police,
department.
you know, substation or whatever you might call it. And then behind that, going toward the east, I guess that would be, there's going to be apartments, a significant number of them. And then next to that, there are townhouses. And then, kind of surprisingly to me, but pushing up then along 222 are single homes.
It follows the topo.
On the old Phil
Yeah,
Rose side?
It sort of
Say
follows.
that again?
On the old Phil Rose side, where, on the other side of the
No.
No,
This
this
is
is all part of the same
This is
parcel.
all part of, wow,
It's
this
just
is,
This
stacked
is all
from.
part of that. It's a huge
Yeah.
piece of dirt.
you never really see it, you're either,
Yeah, I have a drawing that I meant to bring today, and it's laying on my desk. Sorry.
Yeah.
next meeting for sure,
But I don't know, the last drawing I saw, there was a small portion of it, I think it was maybe 15 acres of it, that the hospital was retained.
Yes, yeah.
For just future growth for them at some level, but, because they had to dial back the retail component of it, I think the developer was satisfied with not taking that corner, because there's only so much retail they can put on there because of the road structures. Now, it's interesting to hear that there is some road improvements, but I'm assuming those are just for the local roads, that's not really touching the interchange staying the same.
I understood it was the intersection.
I thought the diverging diamond was a requirement of
Any development?
yeah, anything that included the residential component, yes, because the number of trips.
Yeah, I know that pertained to the retail for certain, but I wasn't sure if there was a different calculation for residential versus retail.
I'm sure there is in terms of, trip calculations in terms of vehicles per day at peak hours. But they're gonna encapsulate that some of those people leaving their homes are some of the trips going to some of those stores. But the last I heard was and I thought the requirement to put the diverging diamond in was what was holding that project up for so long. But my understanding was the same, that they got some type of grant funding, I think to the tune of like $3 million, to assist in the diamond.
And the retail is supposed to been, it's not really a closely guarded secret, but it's supposed to be including a Whole Foods, that's grocery. Or as it's sometimes known, whole paycheck.
Yeah.
So I guess, John, you answered my question, what I was thinking. So there's no definitive time when they're gonna put the shovel in the ground?
For that project over in Baker Mill, I have not heard. From my understanding at this point, they have not even filed a land development plan. They're just kind of getting the pieces together, trying to get the right plan, so that when they do file, they have the plan, so to speak. It sounds like the developers are doing a good job in the sense that they're sort of taking their time, but they're doing their investigations and research to make sure that they're able to pull off. Right now they just put a concept plan down to say as a starting point, this is what we have in mind. And I think they're proving that out a little bit before they submit something that's, is more definitive as far as this is what we want to execute. So
They have,
they're in that phase.
they have to have something definitive, because they went to Spring Township for zoning hearing board approval last summer,
Mhm.
fall.
Right.
And I mean, you typically don't do that until you've had a thorough zoning review identifying all the issues. And I know like 46 conditions or something like that of their,
Yeah.
executed decision.
Yeah.
Jim Hole is getting one last one in before he retires.
That's part of the process, all development these days, that's really it is sort of a multi-step process before you ever see a land development submission, because there's just so many different things involved. And if you're doing zoning, you have to start that process first. You can't do anything until you get your zoning. So it makes sense. Apart from that, I'm just congratulating Michelle on her nice, her little expose on Bloomberg this week in Wall Street week. That was very, very good. I think it was a little, the juxtaposition, with, the ownership of the mall on that piece was a little jarring, based on our experiences and knowledge. So it tells you a little bit. But apart from that, I think that's basically the big stuff that I've got.
Well, could you address a little bit about current inventory? We don't seem to have any other, set aside the mall for the moment. But retail-wise, there aren't really any significant vacancies in the borough. We don't have empty grocery stores or something.
No,
like that.
the retail segment is, I think, the biggest surprise out of the last year or two, as far as how much energy came back from or into the retail segment, and we're basically full. I mean, even the stuff on North Fifth Street Highway in Township that had sat idle for a long, long time has gotten repurposed and refilled. And so there's an interesting push. There's a lot of new names that are coming along for new types of either discount stores or just new kinds of approaches to different aspects of merchandising. So it's very, very strong. And anything that comes online right now is being looked at hard for being absorbed for new uses. There's not a lot. I mean, that's the challenge with the mall, is that it represents some of the best and most prime real estate for bringing more retail into the area. And the stewardship there is just not really, tapping into that. You just don't have a lot of land. I mean, those projects, the parking requirements on them are pretty, as you know, they're severe. So really the stuff over what we just discussed along Victor Mill Road and Broadcasting Road represents, the best case for bringing on new inventory. You have the shops at Wyomissing, which has vacancy still, even in this market, and it really speaks more to the challenge of the location. It's just hard to do anything there unless you're a point of destination. Things just sort of wither away in that location. There's a few things that do okay, but for the most part, it's just a tough center. I don't really. It's hard to even figure out how to comp that. And for the longest time, their pricing was just ridiculous for what their expectations were for leasing that.
It's like the highest visibility and the worst access.
Exactly, and that's the challenge. Part of the challenge is that so much retail activity is surface visibility. So on your surface roads, you want to, that's that's why Broadcasting Square is so fantastic. You're driving in and around that area all the time, and you see it. I mean, it's always in your view as far as the stores there. Whereas no one really knows what's going on in that whole of shops and Wyomissing. So retail is very sensitive to that. So I think that you get pushback from a lot of the big retailers to want to venture into that. So I mean, they did in early days because there was such a push for retail. Retail was on fire at the time. So I just thought, I think they were falling into the visibility trap, and they were like, we have great visibility, but then it just didn't prove out from how it interfaces and interacts with the community. So it didn't do very well. Other than that.
How about the offices? We were concerned at one point that with remote work and all that stuff, that there was going to be some office owner coming in here asking for conversion to apartments or something.
So you still have this segmentation between the classes of offices. So like if you're in a good B plus A office building, you're doing fine. Anything that's sort of B minus or below, you're giving the space away, and there's still quite a bit of vacancies. So you're older stock, class C-ish type of office. I can see some of that wanting to get repurposed in some fashion, either residential, multifamily, or just getting rid of it and starting over. You don't have a ton of it here. You have a few buildings here locally that will classify for that, but not a ton. You're fortunate from the standpoint that a lot of the development we have in the office has been done in the last 20 years, 20 to 30 years, with your Berkshire, your Boulevard, your Broadcasting Road. Those areas have good office buildings, and for the most part, they're doing pretty well. I mean, historically, our vacancy rates run around 8-9%, in that segment of the market, and we're at that 9-10% there for vacancy, which is not bad. I mean, we're not at 14-15% vacancies in that market there, so it's doing pretty well, and the level of activity is coming up. And so one of the properties I represent is the One Radiant. One Radiant is a 350,000 square foot behemoth of a building. It's really, it's got large spaces. It's very difficult to do smaller tenants in it. So we're kind of at the mercy, so to speak, of bigger companies to wanting to utilize the space there. And we were hurting after. We got lucky because we had longer-term leases that the tenants actually retracted, took the workforces out of there, but they're still paying rent on it. So we're starting to burn off that, and the timing is looking a little fortuitous from the standpoint that as some of those legacy leases are running off, the momentum for businesses is returning to the coming back to work model. I think this is the year that the companies really put their foot down. And we're seeing it in the building. Our personnel count on the building was in that one. The building at full occupancy generally runs between 800 and 900 people on a daily basis pre-pandemic in that building. We were down to about 180 for like a year or so coming after the you know, people could go back to work. 180-200 for the last couple of years. Last year it started to tick up, probably, you know, getting close to 300, but right now coming out of the gate we're pushing 350, and we're hearing from the companies that they're doing, you know, they're mandating the minimum of 4 days back to the office. So that's going to bode well. It's going to bode well for a lot of things, just not just for, you know, obviously the office market in general, but also for the amenities that these office users seek for on a regular basis. You know, for, you know, the foods, you know, and for lunches, and, you know, breakfast and coffee shops, and you know, after work going and stopping at the store to pick up groceries, that type of thing. So I think just the activity is going to increase, and that's just one building. So I think that in general you're going to start to see, you know, might put a little more pressure on the road systems. You might actually have a rush hour, you know, for a while. But yeah, I think it's pretty good. But your inventory is good. Nobody's building office, so there's no new stuff coming online. So what we have here is what we're going to have to live with for, I think, for the foreseeable future. I don't think anybody has the courage at this point in time to be building office. That has to be a very, very specific need for one company that needs an office for a specific reason in a specific region. So they're going to be very far and few between.
All right. Does anybody have any specific other questions for John? Because I would like to then ask Nick, since you're here, kind of segueing with what John has already been addressing in West Reading and so on. Is there anything coming along that you want to?
Sure. One thing, Fred, if I can. Over where Reschedule was, is there some interest in that space? That's a large space.
It is. It's a 57,000 square foot building. BEIT is the remaining tenant in there. I want to say they're in that 8,000 to 9,000 square foot range of it. So you have maybe a little bit more. You might have one other tenant. I think the vacancy is around 40 to 42,000 square feet of that building. So when Reschedule pulled out, they have been struggling with it. The building is a challenging building. So you don't have great window lines on the building, and it's tough to park. It's a little tight on parking there. The building was really kind of set up for like almost a flex style. You can cut it up pretty easily from a structural standpoint. Cost of doing that, but when I went in there, they blew all that out. It used to be a lot more individual offices, but they kept growing Reschedule, so they blew it all out. So now they have to reconstitute that for small users unless they find another large user. We have not had large users in our market for a long time, and I think that's part of the challenge. So I think they need to find the kind of tenant that's willing to commit to a long-term deal, 7-10 years type of thing, to say I need 10,000 square feet or 8,000 square feet, to make the numbers work, to rebuild out segmented units in that, and I think that's part of the challenge. You have a little bit of a lower roof ceiling right in there, so I mean, it's not a bad building by any means. It's just when you compare it to some of the other properties that are out there, I know that tenants they get a little like you end up getting internal offices buried without windows in this space, and that's never something that, you know, especially workforce retention, you know, sensitivity to workforces. A lot of companies don't want to put their employees in that kind of environment. So that's one of the challenges of the site. So it's actually an interesting comparison because that's exactly right next door to the Travelers Building.
Right.
I had 30,000 square feet that come online last year, and within the year I mopped it up. All those suites were all nice, beautiful, wide, because all the core of the building is all either stairwells or elevators or common restrooms. So all the offices are perimeter to the floor plate, which creates wonderful window lines and nice bright offices. And it just didn't take time at all to lease it up. It's about the product, I think, more on that particular, you know, that building.
Thank you. Others? Okay. What are you going to do?
Well, the Palmer site was talked about earlier. That I'm not involved in those discussions, but we know something will eventually go there that will benefit communities, obviously. And that kind of being a gateway coming on the bridge, you want something there that's inviting, something that's going to bring people. Housing that's going to obviously benefit our retailers because they'll be able to walk and utilize that. I had a meeting Tuesday with our borough manager. There's a lot going on with the Schweitzers, the gas station, tanks are getting removed. Before they do anything with the building, they're looking into, can they kind of clean up the building and make it like a usable civic type space, somewhere where maybe you can have small events and things like that. Because you have, it's a garage, so you have high ceilings, you have open space. So I think they want to see if they can kind of get the public works guys to go in there, maybe do a little cleanup on the floor, just see how it looks from there, and then determine, is it worth trying to make it something, or is it, just to level it and go with the parking. But there's bathrooms there. They talked about making 2 like unisex communal bathrooms that would be available for the public to use. So if you're there in the downtown, those would be available. So whatever goes there, whether it'd be neat if they can utilize that building for something, because it would just bring people in for smaller events. Maybe we can do things. I know with the library, can we do stuff that's maybe kid related to try to get families in there? Whether it be, I know when my kids were young, Spring Township, every Wednesday seemed like we were taking them down to Cuckoozing for a family night. It was always something. So maybe they can utilize that space. But they'll know, I think, as they get more into, once the tanks are out of there, that the guys will go in and work on cleaning it up, and then determine is it worth it. But the motor club, obviously, that was repurchased. It's reopened. Actually, I have an email from the general manager. We're going to do a grand reopening. They wanted to kind of get through the first couple weeks and get through the kinks of just reopening the restaurant. But they're actually redeveloping the 3rd floor there into event space, which will be good because it'll be able to probably hold about 100 people, and that'll be good for the avenue. Let me see if there's you want to book a party or something of that nature. Having a space that can accommodate more people. They're doing their 2nd floor. They're doing music there. The nice thing, what they're trying to do, I guess, when it was the Nitro Bar before, the clientele that came to the restaurant wasn't the same clientele that always went to the music. So they're trying to make it that people will come and eat there, but then go upstairs. So the music that they're getting is kind of works with more of the higher end dining, you could say, that they're going with. The Say Cheese building, do you know?
Moss is just waiting. The furniture came in and it came in incorrect.
That never happens.
Never. George, what he said. He goes, "Why didn't I go with my friends instead of someone else?"
Yeah, never happens. It's always smooth.
So he's waiting on that. There's been a nice rebuild inside there. The tile work has been redone. He's moved walls. He's done some really good stuff. He's just waiting for the right furniture.
Do we know what style of restaurant it's going to be?
It will not be Italian. That's what everyone's going. Are we going to have another Italian restaurant? According to Moss, it's going to be seasonal food. So
they're not go by. There's no coming soon, anything like that. They're kind of keeping it, but they're established business owners already in the avenue, so whatever it is, it's going to be
Good
good.
operators.
And it was good. I mean, I was glad they purchased it. Tina at Art on the Avenue, I was talking to her, it came so fast, they just had to jump on it. She's like, we didn't even know what we were gonna do with it,
Yeah.
but it had rental income.
Sure.
So they knew right away as an investment, we'll get a restaurant in there, but let's just secure it, because had that property went on the open market, I think it would have probably got a lot of offer. It would have been,
And
it would have been a bidding.
And just the one thing that was great, he was looking at that building in April, long before the closings occurred, but those buildings went pretty fast. I didn't expect them to go as fast as they did, and
Improvements in those buildings were tremendous.
Yes.
They didn't spare a dime on improving those
And
buildings.
lost a few, so.
No.
But, and the food at the Motor Club is very good, so.
That's about it. Luckily we don't have a lot of vacancies in there. We're fortunate there, but I think there's, the old Sugar Shack is still available, but that space is kind of a unique space, and it's the whole building, so, the first floor's great, but what do you do with the 2nd floor? And, but outside of that, we're moving along. We're gonna be getting into, the soon festival season, where I get very busy. So we got a lot of our, pretty much from March all the way to September, I got pretty much something big almost every month, so I like the big events, they're fun. So I'm kind of, so
Where's you mentioned something shack?
there was a candy place. They were
Sort of near Dillard's.
Yeah, right
In
now.
those row homes.
but they didn't last long. They only actually lasted a couple months. But the building, like I said, it's the number that they want. It's all the utilities included. It's a big number. If you put something in the first floor, what do you put upstairs? That's the issue. So hopefully something goes in there. But that really on the actual strip, that's we do tend to have stuff that when it comes available, it goes pretty quick. Or it doesn't even become available. We had that with Willow Creek. You know, he put tinsel and twig in there and it never really hit the market. She was looking at everyone do that. She was on a side street. She knew Mark was retiring and she jumped on it. So I'd say that we're moving along. We're doing good.
Great.
And I think one of the reasons you don't see inventory, all you have to do is mention your property's up for sale, and I had 4 offers last week, and I'm not even selling. So it's word of mouth is moving property.
I get realtors, they call me all the time, wanting to get out. So.
All right, any other comments here? And Michelle, updates on some things of continuing interest that we can always talk about.
So I know the mall is on everybody's mind. Let's see, Michelle Mayfield from Chris's office, myself, Chief Holmes, Jeff Hope, Glenn Kraft, Jim McCarthy, met with Alexis Roth, who is the attorney for the mall, as well as their regional from New York and local on-site here at the Berkshire Mall managers on Tuesday. So we had a 2-hour meeting at McCarthy's office to go over all of the outstanding issues, followed up by a field trip to the mall, so that Alexis could actually understand some of the things that we were talking about, as she had never been to the property. So the outstanding requirements from all of the fire code, property maintenance code, building code enforcement notices, and also the court order that need to be dealt with. Televising the stormwater and sanitary sewer lines. The sanitary sewer line issue has been fixed. Partial televising of the stormwater lines took place 2 weeks ago. Both NAMDAR ownership and McCarthy's office are waiting to get the videotapes from the televising to actually identify which specific runs are an issue and are going to need to be, in most cases, completely replaced. From what one of the employees at McCarthy's office that was on site for the televising, so he saw pieces of it, said to me, they're gonna have a substantial amount of work to do there. We're guessing, without seeing the videos, a repair cost number between 1 and 2 million, but time will tell. So they agreed on the mall side, they will have, by the end of February, they will have a complete scope of work with a repair plan and schedule back to McCarthy's office. McCarthy agreed they're gonna respond within 2 weeks. Final scope of work for just the stormwater line should be finalized by March 21st. What else? There's some issues with fire code requirements and firewalls. When you have a structure like the Bonton that's considered a vacant space and it was condemned, you're required to install a firewall, a 2-hour rated firewall, to separate that from the public space. So God forbid something happens in there, there's a delay till it gets to the public space. So they were notified, I believe, back over the summer of what needed to be done there, still had not done it. So they agreed that they will install that firewall, put a padlock across all doors where it's required, put the keys in the Knox box, and that will happen by tomorrow. And Chief Holmes and one of the inspectors from Kraft will go out there to confirm that. There's clearing and removal of loose debris on the roof of the Bonton. There's portions of the facade of the Bonton that are falling off or completely off. They claim that they already have 1 quote with 2 others pending from roofing contractors, and they will have a roof quote as well as a plan and timeline for repair to us by February 28th. There's another firewall that's required because they went in to remediate some of the water damage to the Bonton, and there's 2 floors there if you're familiar with the space. There was also a drop ceiling. The drop ceiling being in place is what allowed the sprinkler system to work. Heat builds up against the ceiling, triggers the sprinkler head. They took all of that drop ceiling out, effectively making the sprinkler system ineffective. So there's things they need to do there to fix that. They agreed that they will also do that by February 28th. We're requesting they have a structural engineer look at what I'm gonna call the central section of the mall, so the food court tower, effectively. We had noticed cracking in the interior brick column walls that we pointed out to them when we did the walkthrough. So we want a structural engineer to come out and actually say that that is safe and not an issue. They agreed to do that, it looks like hopefully end of February. And then the other known interior property maintenance issues, holes, water damage in different tenant spaces, we walked through and confirmed those have been repaired. Heather Bachman is the regional manager from New York. She indicated that she replaced it. Gentleman, Jeff and I kind of looked at each other and were like, have you ever heard of him? He's like, I've never heard of him. And she's like, my point being, he was the regional manager who apparently was doing nothing and is no longer with the company. So they were punting some of the blame to this former ineffective regional manager, which I am not fully buying. But we all agreed, let's give them until the end of February to do what they're saying they're going to do. If we have all of the different repair quotes, plans, their timeline, on our side, Chris, I don't know if Michelle talked to you about this. On our side, let's then ask Judge Feuderman for a status conference so we can go back and effectively get a new court order to document those timeframes and hold their feet to the fire that they have to do all those things. What we were making clear to them is we don't want to see the stormwater repairs and resurfacing of the parking lot stretch out another year. Like, in reality, it should not take more than 6 months to get these things done. Okay, we'll give you 7, knowing weather concerns, other things could crop up, but the litany of excuses to continue punting this is not acceptable. I also brought to their attention that I had filed 10 citations at Judge Taylor's office back in October against the mall for all the property maintenance code issues. As of yesterday, no plea had been entered, which typically means they've gone to bench warrant. Alexis, their attorney, indicated she would be responding to those, entering the plea. I expect we'll have a hearing on those sometime in the next month or so, and my position at least is we are going to ask for the maximum amount the judge can award. One, the violations have not been corrected, and I doubt they will be by the date of the hearing. 2, there is a significant amount of staff time between Chris's office, Kraft's office, myself, Chief Holmes, that I would like to recoup in some capacity if we're able to. So, I mean, the conversation I think went better than we all expected it to, but time will tell what is done voluntarily and what is done by court order.
Michelle, I have a question. All this is gonna be done to be sort of an abandoned building, keep it in shape. Yeah. So down the road, does it make it even sellable to be reusable, or is it just maintaining it to a point where it's not even useful in the future?
So, from some confidential conversations, and when I say confidential, I cannot say who they were with or under the guise of what they were specifically about. There is about $30 million in deferred maintenance on that site, on top of the exorbitant asking price of roughly $50 million. Right. So you are looking at anybody that wants to come in and do anything to that site is at least $80 million in, and they've not actually done anything to redevelop it, which is not a number that works. I've talked to a few developers about this, and they're like, yeah, there's no way. I actually asked a developer on a call last Friday, what is a number that, a sale purchase price number that would make sense, and it's in the $5 million range. So I don't think you're gonna see movement because they're not, Namdar is not willing to lower the price, unfortunately. So does anybody have any questions on the mall?
Yeah, one quick thing. Took a drive by there again yesterday, and the area by Ruby Tuesday where they had the mulch fire and had to open the wall up back in June, I believe. They still have boards up there, right? Are they going to repair that, or it looks?
That's actually on the tenant, not the owner. It's in the tenant's
really?
lease that they have to repair that. And unfortunately, a lot of the leases are structured, some of the interior damage was to lens crafters. They had a hot water heater that was leaking that created further damage throughout the space, and the leases are all structured, so the majority of the maintenance and repair is on the tenant, not ownership, which if I owned a 58-acre property, I don't know that I would be trusting my tenants to maintain it, to my standards, I would want the responsibility to be notified, take the repair on, and then work with the tenant to recoup cost. But it doesn't sound like that's how the majority of their leases are structured.
Interesting, considering
Chief
it's an
Holmes is-
exterior wall.
Yeah, Chief Holmes is aware of that. It doesn't matter. You're
Yeah.
running your space, so to speak. So Chief Holmes is aware of that and has been working with management at Ruby Tuesdays to get that fixed. Part of it is because it was a fire, it's insurance money, and they're waiting on the insurance company to settle the claim.
I don't understand why you need a status conference. I don't understand why council can't prepare a stipulation of proposed order on the work that's going to have been done. So that it's not done.
I think that's what's going to happen.
Okay, it seems nuts to wait for a few minutes or something.
I don't disagree, but yes, I mean, so Michelle Mayfield's comment was, let's give this roughly another month or so. We have all the quotes, we'll have timeframes from the contractors, the contracts will be signed, we'll have a better idea of work start date that we should then be able to figure out work end date with some leeway for weather. And then that's where effectively what we did with the first court order, which is the parties sat down, talked, agreed to, these are the things we're gonna put in the stipulation, times 2 the second time, and then have all parties sign it, including Judge Peterman.
Did their attorney ever sign the stipulation?
I'm sorry?
Did their attorney ever sign the first stipulation?
Yes.
Okay. But that wasn't in what you sent us.
No, I finally got a 3-part fully executed copy, but yes, Alexis did sign.
Is there anything we can do about just general ongoing maintenance? I mean, in the food court upstairs, there's many lights that just flicker and blink, or that food court entrance, there are no handicap spaces. So I am concerned about people taking kids, especially up to the dance studio. I mean, most notably myself, my mom takes my kids to the dance studio. She has a handicap placard. She can't park at that entrance. So what can we do for someone in that similar situation? There is no handicap parking spaces there.
I will have to talk to Kraft about that, but I mean, that was part of the conversation about putting the fences up and maintaining ADA access. There are other ADA.
There's other ADA access to the building.
Yes.
But, I mean, if all of a sudden you're gonna have my mom with mobility issues or someone similar, say, go park on the other side of the mall compared to those particular, can we identify a space or two on the front and put up temporary ADA parking for that particular entrance?
No,
Doesn't
because
every
ADA
entrance-
parking has to be certain dimensions, it has to be a certain grade, they'd actually have to redo the parking lot. I mean, I will certainly talk to Glenn about it, but my guess is gonna be there's other ADA parking spaces available on the site.
And we can't just adjust the fences to open up just those ADA spaces at that
No,
entrance?
those fences are up specifically because of concerns about sinkholes. Those fences are up in the areas we have significant concerns about sinkholes. Yeah. No, we haven't even adjusted the fencing to allow easier emergency access to the sprinkler room if need be because of the concern about sinkholes.
It might be yelling at the wall, but the tenant probably ought to be talking to the mall management and demanding such access.
Okay, I'll bring it up to them.
Well, what is the ratio of the available parking that's left? Is there enough ADA spaces available in relation to the number of spaces there are? Like, I know there's gotta be some sort of correlation.
That's a Kraft question, I can't answer that, but I mean, Glenn and Kraft were heavily involved throughout this entire process. So I would be shocked if the answer was no, but I will ask.
You know, they'll get around that because of the Sears closed, everything closed,
Yeah.
there's so much parking, it's just not
Right.
fair, prudent parking. And
Right,
they'll-
it's just like,
It's-
do they have to have it at each entrance? Does there have to be at least, I don't know, if there's a way to
Well, I mean,
force them into.
keep in mind, we technically fenced, the entrance Rick's talking about is fenced off past the entrance, so you actually have to park, that would be further east of the food court, and then go to the sidewalk, come in that way.
Any idea whether Boscos had an increase in business as a result of people being forced
No
to
idea.
walk through there?
I heard they're doing great.
I'm sure they are.
I heard Boscos
Their
is doing
traffic
great.
is wonderful
Yeah.
because, you know, everybody's going to the mall through Boscos. And
In fact, they have,
Unless they fly.
my mom was raving about it, fantastic inventory, customer service, everything went great.
Yeah.
I haven't been in years.
I think they're happy.
Other,
A lot of wear and tear.
other obvious property of interest would be the Crown Plaza, Sheridan, Radisson, whatever you wanna call it. We had a hearing before the Berks County Blighted Property Review Committee also on Tuesday. It was our Blighted Property Day. They agreed to send the first strike letter, which is what they call it, to the owner, notifying them that the borough has requested the county certify it as blighted, go through that process and potentially take it by eminent domain with an attempt to redevelop it. That typically gets their attention. So that letter will be sent. The next, that county review committee meets every other month. The next hearing is scheduled for March 26th. And I would expect we would be on the agenda with hopefully a representative from ownership attending to explain what their intentions are.
And have you heard anything from the current ownership?
Nope. Not since beginning of December when they insisted not only that they were gonna make the repairs to the fire alarm system that were required, but also, yep, January 1st, we're gonna get moving. No, it's January 30th and they're not moving.
I haven't talked to Chief Holmes about this yet, but I would think there should be ballards around those propane tanks that are sitting on the parking lots.
Propane tanks for what?
I think it's for heating.
Like, were previously there when the building was occupied?
No, they're there now. They're elongated propane cylinders.
Propane heat?
I think there's lines going into the building, and I think it's to warm the building.
They'd also, I'm somewhat surprised by that. I mean, the guys were just over there, the whole department was over there the other day because the fire alarm system kept going off and there were a bunch of AFAs, but they need an operational permit just to have those
No,
tanks.
there's two of them about the length of this table.
But I'm saying, put bollards to the side, they need an operational permit just to have those tanks in the lot, and I'm not aware.
No, there's two of them.
I'll say something to the chief.
I forget now the technical term for them, but they're about the length of this table.
That's all I have on properties of interest unless anybody has any questions.
Have we heard anything about, John brought up the Rite Aid in West Reading, but the Rite Aid on State Hill Road?
I mean, we got the same, I'm sure it went to every Rite Aid in the nation, the same Chapter 13 bankruptcy filing paperwork. I've been in there a few times. Phil said something to me, I think it might have been at the West Reading Task Force meeting, about how the West Reading store's shelves were pretty bare.
Yeah,
And it was interesting
yeah, he
because,
actually called Chip.
yeah, I said to him, that's weird, I was just at the one in Sinking Spring last weekend and didn't notice anything. Since then, I've been in both the one in Sinking Spring and the one on State Hill Road, and they're looking a little barren.
Yeah.
But I've not heard of,
But if you ask, my husband's asked the employees whether they're closing, and they say that they're not allowed to stock to the former levels because of the bankruptcy.
Right.
So that they don't think they're closing, at least
It's
on
a nice
State
way
Hill.
of saying that the suppliers aren't gonna give them any
Yeah.
profit.
Yeah.
There's no way of saying rent's due. Rent's due. Cash falling down the stairs.
Yeah. That's what they're really saying.
yeah, yeah.
But they don't, so. They knew Antietam was closing.
Yeah, that's actually a good question. The Inn at Reading, Chris, I don't know how much you wanna get into this as well, but we, Chris, myself, Jim McCarthy, met with Mike Shervonic and Keith Mooney, his attorney, it was 2 weeks ago at this point, finalizing or talking through the attempts to finalize an agreement that Shervonic would sign and post escrow to close out all of the conditions of the conditional use approval. I don't know if you looked at your email this morning, but I found out from Phyllis that Shervonic owes the borough $24,000 in outstanding review fees. So at this point, until he pays that balance in full, we're not renewing anything.
And yet, the property remains occupied
Correct.
without a certificate of occupancy.
I mean, again, one could be issued for, we could issue the building permit CO, it's really the zoning CO that can't be released until the conditions of the conditional use approval are issued, but yes.
It's very frustrating, because you look at this long craft code for, to some extent, nickel and dime violations. And you've got this guy who's had the facility occupied for months with no certificate of occupancy, and we don't seem to be doing anything effectively.
Do you wanna counter that?
It'll be coming to that. I mean, it's an incremental process that it will come to completion.
I mean, we are stronger about a 2-inch high sidewalk than this. I don't understand.
I don't fully disagree with you, and I mean,
Our priorities seem absolutely backwards.
the conversation we had on a staff level was we could placard and condemn it, and, you know, we're not gonna physically go in and remove people, we've never done that at any property that we've condemned. So, I mean, we can do that with the understanding those people probably aren't going anywhere.
Well, do we do anything to prevent him from, you know, if there's a vacancy, fill in a vacancy? I mean, what are we doing?
Well,
And
the reality
is
though,
the certificate of occupancy
Janet,
meaning anything?
the reality, Janet, is that he's got outstanding fees owed and other such things, and needs as much cash flow as possible.
Well, this isn't how to get help. I'm sorry. That's not our responsibility. Who else would we allow this nonsense?
Well,
It is
in
completely utter.
relation to what our several years of experience with the property was, this is moving forward. So I think we gotta be careful about overstating I understand what you're saying, I'm not arguing with it, but the reality is that it's probably not in our best interest to make it more difficult.
Then what does the certificate of occupancy mean?
Well,
If we're allowing people to occupy blatantly 4 months, and then we do.
but my understanding, Michelle, is that the rental units are to code, they are.
I mean, they've been inspected, and Kraft could issue and release the certificate of occupancy, they just have not done so until we finalize the conditions of that agreement.
So it's paperwork that's holding it up, it's not unsafe.
No, it's money that's holding it up.
No, ultimately, of course, and that's why I'm reluctant to shut him down.
Well,
He
then
needs the money.
what's his incentive?
Chris, are we close?
We're working through a process and will either comply with the requirements that we have discussed to satisfy the conditions in the conditional use decision, and if he doesn't complete that process, then he will be shut down.
Does that include site management also, all of the debris,
That's
piles
part
of debris?
That's part of it.
So what is the time frame on this?
Well, right now, it's up to what Mike pays us $24,000, cause we're not doing anything until,
So if he doesn't pay us the 24,000, how much longer does it continue?
I think that's up to council at this point.
Well, then it goes nowhere, and he continues to have people there without CO.
Well, I mean, no, at that point, we would placard and condemn it. Again, we're not going in and physically removing people. We've never done that. We wouldn't have even done that at the mall had we condemned the mall and they still decided to open.
Okay, so he's got how many units and what's he charge, $1,000 a month?
I have no idea what he's charging, but he has 102 units.
And he can't pay 24,000, please.
He also has a $7.5 million mortgage on the
Yeah.
property.
Okay, so he can't afford to do anything he agreed to at the conditional use hearing, so what is this kind of game we're all playing?
Well, the process is being done, so we have to work with the process.
Well,
So,
we have chosen, and we are in part set the speed of the process, which is glacial. And I mean, personally, it's unacceptable. But I'm
If
gonna
we
say.
have a time frame and the time frame doesn't come to fruition, sorry,
I mean,
we're-
then John can do something.
we've addressed today
You overpaid.
our
Yeah.
three of our major taxable properties, okay? And our major taxable properties. And we're working through them as fast as we can. that's, you know, and that's what it is. Yeah, I would love to see it go a lot faster myself, but
Chris, are you agreeable
it is.
to, I didn't have time to do it before this meeting, but my intention was to forward those outstanding invoices to Mike. Let him know that no action will be taken to review his revised plans until that balance is paid in full, and if the balance is not paid in full by the end of February, I will be requesting council to authorize us moving forward to condemn, placard and condemn.
I think we should talk to council about that before you send your kind of communication.
So there goes another one.
We can call a special meeting.
yeah.
Should be like 2 weeks out.
I was gonna say not even at this point we're a week and a half out.
With this, when would you think this communication with them could be done? The
It can
earliest?
be, I mean, I
We could also,
recommend that we have input from council to send a threat of shutting them down. So that's, but I mean, as soon as,
Well, you got 5 council people right here.
Well, at a minimum, can't you send a letter saying unless you pay the
Oh, that's right.
24,000, we're not approving anything else?
well, certainly that part of it.
Yeah.
Michelle.
I was
can
gonna-
do
yeah.
today.
Well, then at least do that today.
And
Then
as
send
far
it,
as,
be sure and copy Keith.
I'm sorry?
Be sure and copy Keith.
Oh.
as far as the council meeting, you probably better put something, be prepared to put something on the agenda sooner than later, so we don't get into that nonsense. It's not on the agenda, we gotta wait another month. Are we,
I agree.
we're.
I was gonna offer, it's not entirely on topic, but it somewhat is, finances next week. We can't amend the agenda at this point. Planning commission seems like no. Okay, I'll put it under my
I'm
report.
saying no, because I just got an email this morning that I'm not gonna be able to finance that.
All right, I think we've pretty much established where we are. Are we finished with this now? As far as the economic development aspect of things, have we heard anything from PennDOT regarding State Hill Road as to?
No, and I don't expect we're going to. Very long story short, I had a call with Newman Developers last week, and they had been contacted by PennDOT the week before. Newman is the entity that was interested in the mobile gas station and making it into a Wawa. PennDOT had reached out to them the week before, basically saying, I'm gonna get the terms wrong here, but their overall design for State Hill Road, they basically had to send out for a peer review. And the comments that came back in that peer review are requiring them to somewhat redesign it. So they're not anywhere close to finalizing their design.
PennDOT's design or
Yes.
what?
So Wawa's not gonna do anything right now?
They really can't.
They can until they know how much
Until they know
right
what's
away.
gonna happen.
What the work that's going on State Hill right now, like on at the mall, is that mall work? Is that our
That's
work?
utility company work.
That's just okay.
Yeah.
We talked, there are some sites that are potential, apartment complexes or whatever. We talked about the Arner's restaurant thing. Is there anything new as far as, we have the conditional use hearing for the,
1001 Hill Avenue.
yes. So,
They're gonna come to the February meeting to give an overview on that project.
our February
Yes.
meeting, all right, so look forward to that. About the possibilities there. On the, we talk about tax incremental financing, the TIF, and it needs to be like to a specific project. I'm still, as you all know, obsessed with getting the passenger train to Philadelphia to come over to Wyomissing. And that would lead us toward needing a station, and the powerhouse building would be about where, in my estimation, the train would terminate. that is a transportation kind of thing, would that sort of thing, would TIF financing be applicable to that?
Yeah, but to me, the time to do that would have been when Equus owned it and was redeveloping the entire site. Because if you're looking at, if you're looking at dollars in terms of what they bought it for versus what they redeveloped and then it got reassessed for, that's where your cash cow was. What Kevin Hughes is proposing for now is really just a 54 unit apartment building that's not, it's part of the island, but it's not on the island. And he's made it clear he can't do anything there until there's a second means of access from the 8th Avenue south side of the railroad tracks to get onto the island.
I thought there was a remediation problem too.
We're working through that. He has a soil management plan.
I'd like to also harass Harrisburg about help in getting a pedestrian/bicycle bridge over the train tracks.
Agreed, though I'm gonna say if you're gonna build it, you gotta make it vehicular. And it's unfortunate it increases the cost by probably about $5 million. I just don't see I don't see foot and bike traffic using it. And it's gonna cost $5 million just to build it for bikes and pedestrians.
I actually had pursued it in West Reading with Jack Gumbach.
Yep.
And we were almost to getting it done. All that someone had to do was make a phone call, and that phone call never occurred.
That stinks.
Oh yeah. I think you might have been at that task force meeting when I discussed it.
This could be a stretch, but there's grant monies for areas to develop for economic purposes. It's a stretch.
But then we're the ones footing that bill. So if we're applying for that grant, we're the ones that are paying for that
Right.
bridge to go in.
No, I'm going back to the train station in that area.
I'm sure if
I don't know. It's a stretch.
I'm sure actually, Fred, there's probably federal transportation money out there for something like that. It's at this point, I would think any grant application would be subject to a finalized plan showing that that rail line is coming online in 27, 28, 29, like whatever the finalized date is. But I can talk to Econ about that.
Are there any other scattered sites around that we want to bring back on our current radar?
That I can think of now.
Does anybody pardon me, does the committee have any other comments, questions, suggestions, whatever? If not, thank you all for being here.
Do we have to do this?
Oh yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, we need to move the February meeting because I will be at a conference that week and not here to attend. Which I mean, you're welcome to meet without me, but.
No, you're always a wealth of information.
And I've confirmed with Chuck Krantz from C2 Design on behalf of the Met. They know the revised date and they're fine with it. So they will be here on February 20th.
Would a member of the committee please make a motion to pass on to council?
So moved.
Reschedule the meeting.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Just as far as all the economic redevelopment work that we have been pursuing for many years, some of the proof of that is the recent resale of the knitting mills buildings and the enormous, what was the total transfer tax?
I think it was close to 63 million. The transfer tax was like 300 and change split between us and the school district. And remember, that is resale times 2. Because most of them sold, there's the first time when Equus bought them, but most of those were then sold from Equus to another entity, and now some of them are transferring hands again.
So it works.
Job well done.
All right, we are adjourned.